Hello there. Hi, John. Can you hear me okay? And is the video all right? Everything working? Okay. Oh, good. Everything's okay. Great. Um, you're talking about the uh, the maintenance and those other kinds of things. You know what I'm hoping for is we what we really need is that we need some more available watchmakers. In other words, rather than having to rely on the manufacturer, is to basically find some young people who are interested in going into watchmaking, as you know, and doing the service and doing things like that because they enjoy, playing with watches. The way things are set up now, it seems that so many of them, the only way they can do servicing is to be part of or have a special license for doing brands like Rolex and some of these other ones. Hi, Nelson. Hi, Donald. And so, um, your question's a good one, but it not only applies to these new guys who are doing stuff, but it also applies to sort of the whole field of watchmakers. My watchmaker is this 85-year-old uh, Portuguese guy who he's really good, but his I think he's a little behind on things. He can't get parts for a lot of the stuff that I have. This is one of the reasons that you'll find a lot of watchmakers just love ETA because they can get the parts, or they used to be able to. I think they still may be able to, and they understand it. They know how to work with it, and so they really love ETAs. But on the other hand, when you get into some of these more exotic, uh, let's see, more complex horology or unique horology, it's really hard finding somebody that knows how to handle it outside of the watchmaker himself. This is sort of I'm glad you brought that up too, because with our watches, one of the things that Agenor said, they said, well, we don't do maintenance. So we all ordered extra hands. All of the things on this watch that we had made are bespoke. The case, the hands, the dial, everything. Even the bands. The bands had we did a lot of stuff with the bands and the buckle to get everything to go together. And yeah, we're going to take really good care of our watches. Hope to find sort of a general watchmaker that can, do some things with it. We have another one of the other issues is that we have a special regulator in ours called an Agen pit, and there's a little video that shows how to work it. And instead of having like a little regulator pointer or something like that that you point it toward R for wait F for fast or S for slow, this one is you unscrew certain parts of it, and then you move it, and then you tighten it up, and you put in the time grapher, and if it needs adjusting one way or the other, you do the same thing with a regular, I guess, regulator. But the other part of this is that you loosen these other two screws, and you can change the beat. So if the beat's off, you can change it. So I mean, it's really it's a very cool regulator, and not rocket science to work for a watchmaker. Someone like me who likes to use a toothpick to push them around, you get a little that that that's why I like the watches that I can play with and go into the movements and do different things with them. Oftentimes ending up in there not working ever again. Oh, hi, Ivan. Good to see you. Tim, how are you? Okay, back to the oligarch again. Hi, Tim. Sam's Watch Repair in Chattanooga, Tennessee is the best for repairs. Oh, I didn't know that. There's a guy in New York City who's supposed to be really good too. Hey, how's it going there, Eric? Good to see you. Boy, is it getting late in Sweden right now? What time is it there? Here it's only 4 in the afternoon. Okie doke. Let's talk about your plans for your next watch. Um, does anybody say, well, I've got all the watches I need, so I don't have any plans for new watches? Anyone? About 10 p.m. Okay. Um, all. Yeah. Um, I I have a list in my head. I've never written it down, but there are watches I know that I'd like to have if one comes along that I can afford in the right conditions. And there are other watches I have that sort of are I really should sell because I don't use them anymore. I don't play with them anymore, or I do very little. But there's sort of, in watch collection, I think we all change at some point. We go from, oh, maybe getting, a bunch of divers or something like that into something a little more interesting horologically. And so I marvel at different things than I used to. Hi, Nelson. Next time you speak to your Portuguese watchmaker, tell him bom dia. Okay. I will. No, he's a cool guy. Um, he doesn't use a time grapher. This is what's so amazing. If I take a watch in there, say it's running a little too fast, a little too slow, I'll say, okay, come back and get it. I go back a couple days later, that thing is working perfectly. I have no idea how he does it. I think, like the old rock opera Tommy with the deaf, dumb, blind pinball player. He does it by touch and sense of smell. I think this guy, he is so good. Only one FP Jorn. Yeah, I know. I got my FP Jorn. One of them, my resonance is just really working well. My uh, Chronomet vein. Maybe it's because I wore it too much or something. I was using it all the time. That needs to go to go in for service, and I think what it needs is a new hairspring. I'm just guessing. I'll send it in and say, look, guys, this is what's been going on. Would you check this? And we'll see what happens. Hi, Mark. Hi, Rancher. Still waiting for my next watch to arrive. Ahem. Oh, well, if you didn't jam the whole thing up with 69, I think it'd be there now. Ah, geez. There they are, the two drinking buddies, Mark and Tim. FP Jordan Winks. Ah, hi, Lastrovitz. How you doing? Good to see you. Glad you're here. Um, anyway, so in terms of that's at least in my head. There's certain ones that I know that I'd like if I bump into one that is my price and everything else. Uh, the rancher and I got a couple of those the last of the Urban Jurgensens, and they were just like I'd always wanted an Urban Jurgensen, but I could never afford one. And finally, this all of a sudden, out of the blue, um, where were they at Federico? What had happened? They had given Federico all of these watches because what had happened was that the whole thing was being sold to Kari Vuitton and some other investors. And so they wanted to get rid of all of the ones on the shelf, so to speak. And it happened to be the ones I wanted. The one that Rancher got was just even just really amazing watch. and it's sort of cool. I mean, you sort of know what you want, and those are ones that we're sort of looking at. The other one is that um, these watches turned out amazingly well. I just got my I had mine 15-day testing that they have at the for uh, chronometer certificate that they have at the Horological Society of New York. By the way, Clyde, I highly recommend if you want to have yours chronometer tested, do so because this watch can seems to handle it not only up to standards but way above standards. I was thinking, somebody mentioned, they said, well, you can go to Base on Comb next time. I'm thinking, that might be an idea. Have them do some of the charging for us. Surprised by a Japanese made Citizen watch, closed market, but so beautiful. It's cool. Mark, FP Journ every day, all day with pleasure. I don't blame you. I love FP Journs. I just can't afford them anymore. I'm going to have to be happy with the two that I have, which is, I enjoy wearing them. I enjoy everything about them. They're wonderful watches, but they just the prices. I showed the price to that they're selling for to my accountant, and he thought it was just insane. So going back though, I mean, how do you look at? Are you thinking of watches like I am? And well, on the one hand, there's a we're making one of these with a Guy Shea, and I want to get one of those. And also, we're doing a a Zulu hour watch. It's going to be we're going to have a revised movement for that. So we're going to get a new movement for a what amounts to it's something like a GMT, but not quite the same because it's got to have 24 hours on it, and so they're going to have to put there'll be the regular dial, and then there'll be I'm hoping they're going to do it with a retrograde 24 hour on a retrograde, and the other one or perhaps jumping hours. I don't know what they're going to do. That's something that we've got to work out. And so that's another direction, but there's still some out there that I'm always looking at Daniel Roth and Roger Dubuis. And another thing I really like a lot are the pre-silicon Patek Philippe's. And they're not too old. I mean, I think 2009 when they started stuffing silicon hairsprings in them. I I don't want any of those, but the older ones that aren't real old that have some great designs, like the 21, what is it, 5124 that I really like. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, too, I got a waiting list on those, Clyde. I keep getting. I got a whole mailbox full. I hadn't even had a chance to look at yet. That how do I get one of those? Well, uh, we'll hope to get more out. In fact, we're almost not exactly, but close to doubling the numbers with two watches. So for those who are interested, we have like I think 1,200 people signed up now on Pure Horology. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up on Pure Horology, and we'll see about getting you on a list. Um, what are some of the watches? Okay, Mark, you're going to buy nothing but FPJs, and I can't blame you. Mark showed me a Patek Philippe and wanted to know what I thought that was. I think it's a Calatrava, Mark, but the thing was, I looked at it, I thought, oh, that's Philippe Dufour. And it wasn't, but the dial looked exactly like one of his dials. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Doing a lot of research into modern day Gerald Genta and Pasha de Cartier Sentier. Whoa, boy! I tell you, the ones I like with the Gerald Genta, and I'm always tempted by those, is the retrogrades. He's done some very very interesting stuff with those, and I like those a lot. Sometimes you can find a really good buy on one, and good one to keep your eye out for. Cartier Pasha, yeah, those. One of the things about Cartier, and I'm not sure about the Pasha model, but up to a certain point, they were all, or at least a lot of more ETAs. One thing you want to avoid, I never get, what are they called? A Must de Cartier. Must de Cartier was in the 70s. These two, I think they were a couple of brothers, and they were really more like a couple hucksters that took over the marketing and started putting out these really crummy everything. It was called Must de Cartier. Avoid those. Those are ones you don't want. On the other hand, you have these rare birds like uh, the torture with the THA movement in it. It's a mono pusher. The Citizen Campanola was the name. Not available in North America. That's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up, John. A lot of models, and Brian, I think some of the same may be true for some Cartiers. They're just available in certain places, in Asia, for example, or some other place, and I'm not sure how they do it or why. The U.S. market's it's a good market, but there are other really good markets too. Um, Let me ask you this. This is one of the things, other than ones that are, like Gerbel Force, that like, $200,000 watches, and some of these new kids are doing them, and they're coming out. Their first couple of watches are in the 30 and $40,000, and they're worth it. I mean, they're really great watches, but there's it's just like, there's no way to afford those, and so there's sort of like, trying to think of a company that says, "Well, we got this new watch, and it's good in terms of the price, the horology, the way it looks, and everything." Do you got anything like that that looks good to you guys? Lastovich, considering the JLC Master Ultra Thin Perpetual, yeah, yes, those are very, very nice watches. That's another. In fact, that's another line of watches. Not the master, because, well, I think what happened. I think some of the master, the ones that are master, part of the master lines now, used to be part of the geophysic, and so when they got rid of the geophysic line, which was my very favorite, naturally, like the True Second that they had in that. That's a watch I wouldn't mind getting. If you see a True Second um, watch by Jaeger-LeCoultre, the thing is, it is got to be one of the most boring looking dials imaginable, but it's got this great horology in it. That I mean, it was sort of like, yeah, that's really a great watch, but it sort of looks like nothing. But it's something that I've sort of wanted at some point. But in terms of saying, "Wow, look at so and so, they're coming out with these new models." Beside the one that John mentioned, beside that Citizen, what are some other ones that you've been thinking about? Hey, football fan, how you doing? H Moser is expensive than before, but still a good buy. You're absolutely right. H Moser, um, they came out with a flurry of them. The one that I really like, and I think Art Ledenbetter got one. It's their GMT. It's part of their heritage models. I really like the looks of those heritage cases. That's one of the things we were wanted to go with our Zulu time watch, was have a heritage case, and like Patek Philippe's. It's actually the Patek Philippe's pilot watch is actually called a Calatrava pilot, and it's really really an interesting watch. Beside, who else does some really good ones? Zenith pilot watches have that design. Somebody said IWC does, but IWC, the ones I saw were more like World War II Luftwaffe designs that they had, Flieger designs on that. You're looking for something from like the 20s and 30s, that sort of that look to it. So what are some other ones you guys are thinking about going after? Anything new that came out that was either shown in the well, we had 2022 is pretty much over as far as new watches are concerned. One place to look. I've already got a Urban Jurgensen, so I'm not going to look there because they're so expensive. But Kari Voutilanen is supposed to be coming out with a whole new line of Urban Jurgensens. There was right before Urban Jurgensen sold it to Voutilanen Group. There was a one, I think it was around 15,000. I'm trying to think the name of it, but there was a nice little watch. It was just like it was one of those watches that I think had I not had one already, I would thought, boy, that's what I want. Stainless steel. Um, Most of the other Urban Jurgensens, and this is probably looking at the old school ones, were gold and platinum. And so that's something I think they're going to see a lot less gold and platinum and more steel. But unfortunately, rather than really giving you a big discount on steel, I think they're going to be closer to what gold used to be. So I don't know. What else you guys have? This is that you see as an interesting kind of thing, either that or something that's been around that you'd like to have. Um, I still avoid vintage watches. I just not because I have anything against them, but rather because they don't interest me as much. I mean, it's sort of like, well, they didn't have to go through the quartz wars and a few other things like that. I know there are a lot of really interesting ones with a lot of interesting movements. Hey, Stephen, what do you think about some of the micro brands? And looking, well, the the whole thing about micro brands, it depends on what they're trying to do. A lot of the ones that I've seen, the emphasis is all on the dial instead of the movement. And so you'll see some really interesting dials. In fact, you'll see some interest like wandering hours and some interesting things like that. Um, but as a whole, I'm not sure about them. I'm that doesn't mean there's something wrong with them, but it means that I'm just not sure. I mean, some of these young guys that come out with uh, sort of named after the watchmakers like Bidet and Peterson. And here are a couple of young guys. Their first watch was fantastic, but it was $30,000, $40,000. There's another guy in France who makes a young guy. He's probably in his 20s, still just making these gorgeous watches that I like. I mean, they're very much like he sat down with Breguet and made one with him, and just and they're key wound. I really like those watches, but his stuff was up around 60, $70,000 now, and he's got a waiting list. A lot of these, a lot of the places that you look, when I was looking at some of the Rolex, a lot of them were already sold out, and not Rolex, but Omega. So I don't know where to go on when you talk about these micro brands. There was Agenor gave me the name of a brand, and sometimes in looking at the comments that I have on Watch Art side, people come up with these brands, and I look them up, and they look interesting, but I've found that a lot of these things that um, if you look closely at them, once you get your mitts on them, they don't quite look as good as you had thought they looked. I mean, it's sort of like they're good at a glance, but the rest of them not so much. But like I said, somebody there could be a set of watches. Some guys got a micro brand out there, and 5 years from now, the watch will be 100 times more valuable because they did something to that nobody paid attention to. So I don't dismiss anything really. I mean, good watches come from good minds. Oh, let's see what you got there. Hey, Big Sal, are you referring to Urban Jurgensen's Big Eight? No, not that one. The Big Eight I didn't care for. The Big Eight, I think, had instead of having the uh, P9 or P19, one of the instead of having the Urban Jurgensen movement, they had I think it was a Frederick Piguet movement or something like that. So the Big Eight wasn't the one, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think they had the P9 or 19, whatever it was. Um, but it was the sort of their core watches. They have one with a detent escapement in it, and that has a special movement number on it. Now that would be interesting, but it was pretty expensive if I'm not um, not mistaken. Hey Kyle, I purchased a Signa Blue Planet recently. Very interesting watch. Impossible to tell time with. Kyle, don't feel bad. My Chaumet uh, dandy already open face is pretty hard to tell time with. After when the hands get over a certain point, they're almost invisible because of a black background with black hands. But boy, it's one of my favorite watches. Love that watch. Even though you can't tell time with it. Hi, Riza 81. Give us an example of a couple of micro brands that you think are not so good. That's a good question, and I just don't pay any attention to them. I don't know their names. Let me see if I can think of any. I don't know. The only ones I can remember are ones I think are pretty good ones, like Ophion. The reason I like Ophion is that I think they concentrated on the right things, namely they have a really good case, and they have an interesting movement. I won't say it's a great movement, but it's an interesting one. So yeah, but that's the thing about micro brands. I just don't pay that much attention to them. I wish I could tell you more. I guess Larique. I don't know if anybody considers that Larique is a micro brand. It's sort of not. It's um, Larique is a group. We're sort of a group that got together, made a watch, but we're not trying to sell them, except to ourselves. If we're a micro brand, I don't think so. We don't. I tell you, the things about micro brands, they have a totally different business model than we have, and they deal with different things. What we did, we went. If the choices that we made, I think were good ones, and they were informed by two things. One, we wanted the very best of whatever there was. We got the best dial maker, the best hand maker, the best case maker, the best movement maker. Everything was along those lines, and and then when we weren't sure, we would ask somebody who did know, which was mainly our designer or the our Agenor, or somebody. It that is the kind of approach rather than someone who took more of a business approach and said, well, this is what we want to do. And again, the emphasis tends to be on the as they say, it's on the sizzle and not the steak. Hey, flippin' Zicko, just like 2 a.m. Huh? Recently saw a new model skeleton Zenith, but could not see the hands. Yeah, John, there was one they had, it was sort of an interesting one they did with a French clothing company called something like Fusao, something like that. And probably a great movement, but I couldn't read the thing. I don't like the kind of skeletonization that Zenith does, nor the kind of on the new Roger Dubuis, the same thing that got this skeleton that you can't read anything. On the other hand, the H. Moser that won the Grand Prix for, I think it was a Tourbillon, I'm not positive, but that thing had a sort of little dial up around 12 o'clock, between 12 and 6. There was a sort of the main dial, and then the rest of it was skeletonized, and then you could see the tourbillon. But the way they did it was that it made it look so very elegant watch. I really like the way that H. Moser did it and most other things that they do too. Hi, whole milk. Thoughts on the Chronosys chronoscope with the monopusher chronograph developed by Strahler. Um, stuff developed by Strahler is really good. I'll put it that way. Um, I'm not a chronograph fan, which is doesn't mean that I hate them. I I just don't see them as being something I'm interested in collecting primarily because I think the all of the extra subdials sort of mess up the main dial. Plus the fact that I just don't have a use for them. I mean, if I did some kind of timing work, um, yeah, that'd be fine. I have a Daniel Roth chronograph with an El Primero movement in it, and it's okay, but I just it's not something I'm really interested in. So, this is something that some people um, get upset, and you're not one whole milk, but some people go, "Some, how come you don't like these, or how come you don't like this?" I've been asked, how come I haven't ever bought a Rolex, or how come I haven't got this, or how come I do have this. Just I just sort of follow my nose, like a a pig looking for truffles. My truffles are different, perhaps, than some other people's truffles. Um, the kinds of stuff I like, I can't afford. That's the big problem. And so I think to me, the whole game in getting a good watch is figuring out how first of all, finding those that are out there that nobody's looked at. That's one thing. There's some interesting ones. Zurich, I think, is the name of it. They make those two armed hands, and they do things with multiple tracks. Really, an interesting kind of thing. They have a Myota movement in them, though, so that's not you know it doesn't mean they're terrible. It's just not the kind of horology that interests me, even though it's a very interesting watches. On the other hand, the Alphus Academic by Daniel Roth is very interesting, even though it's only a second hand. And they put three arms on it and three tracks, and so suddenly it's very interesting as opposed to being just like I've got. I've got the we just have one over here at it was 8:45 or something. I think we wanted it at 8:30, and they couldn't put it there because of the way when they created the movement for us, there was only certain places that we could put the subdial, but we wanted it fairly. It's subdials are often called eccentric dials, and we wanted it eccentric both in the position as well as being an eccentric because it's subdial. Okay, I got the notice, the frying pan time. Okay, all right, one last thing. What are your thoughts on Felipe Pudlunk watches? Young watchmaker out of Germany. His stuff is really great. I to me, I guess he's not a movement maker because he doesn't make his own movements, but he makes very, very interesting watches. I've sort of begun to come to like some really good watches that are done with the ETA. I have my Chaumet Dandy Arty open face is an example. The base movement is ETA, but the module in it is a sort of a double Agonor agonized gears in it. That watch just I could watch that thing for hours. So I think that the guy that you mentioned, Big Sal, at Pick a Lake, I wish they'd give me easy names like Well, Philippe's okay. I think Philippe's watches are fascinating to look at, and I mean, really good design, good cases, and things like that. Not, oh, I don't know, sort of flashy to be flashy. Anyway, guys, thank you for taking the time and as I go, and thanks for coming. Have a great weekend, and hope to see you next week. I hope to see you online.